Whenever you don't know anything, they'll pull you to the side and help you understand it.
From the teachers, they help us learn a lot, and that's what's going to help me graduate.
When you're in middle school, high school, you build on those and you learn more and more.
One of my plans for college is to get to Cornell or Stanford.
My plan is that I will go to UCLA.
For medicine at UCLA.
Yeah, I want to be a doctor when I grow up.
I would like to study for law, to be a doctor or an engineer.
I'm going to have a good future and a good education, and I'm going to go to a good college.
Hello, I'm Lillian Vasquez, and I want to tell you about a very special opportunity for you to support KVCR and the American Graduate Project. If you're committed to making a difference in education, then this is your personal opportunity. Tour our station, check out what goes on behind the scenes, visit our green room, our control room, and our production studio. But the unique part of this pledge package is that it allows you to share your very own story about education and why it's important to you. Tell your own story and what made a difference with you. Together, we can inspire others. Here's all you have to do. Pledge at the $125 giving level to record your story. We want to know why education is important to you. When pledging $125 to KVCR's American Graduate Project, you will make a difference in the lives of teenagers in our community. Thank you.
This is the Roadtrip Nation Experience Curriculum, which empowers students to define their own roads in life. For 10 years now, we've been sending young people on road trips across the country in search of wisdom and advice from leaders of all walks of life.
It's kind of like discovering who you are and who you truly are.
The experience culminates with students going out into their local communities and interviewing their own leaders about how they got to where they are today.
You're actually asking the questions that you want to ask them, and you want to get the feedback on how you could be a better person.
What exactly gave you the spark, to start you out to want to be a firefighter in the very beginning?
When you were younger, say about our age, could you see yourself ever doing this career?
How did you overcome the obstacles that life thrown at you?
Where were you at our age? Where were you when you were 16, 17, and 18?
Did anyone doubt you in your process of trying to become a basketball player, trying to become Secretary of Education?
Oh, sure. People doubt you all the time. And so the question is, do you let those doubts stop you, or do you listen to them and take those weaknesses and turn them into strengths?
We all need to challenge ourselves often in order to help us grow as individuals.
Hello, I'm Lillian Vasquez. We've just seen how the Roadtrip Nation curriculum has enriched the lives of students from all over the United States. Please help us to ensure the same Roadtrip Nation experience for inland area students. You can do this when you pledge at the $60 level. You will help to support KVCR and ensure this type of learning for a student right here in our own backyard. Of course, you're welcome to give at any amount that fits your budget, and know that you are supporting KVCR, education, and the American Graduate Let's Make It Happen project. The number to call is 800-533-5827 or pledge online at kvcr.org. And thanks.
Hello, I'm Roger Bowman, and I want to welcome you tonight to Plugged Inland. Tonight we have a very special show for you. This is a pledge drive that, with your support, will enable us here at KVCR to continue to bring to you in-depth discussions of important local issues here in the Inland Empire. Tonight we have 4 guests that are going to cover very different topics. And this is a live program, so you can call and ask questions of these guests during the program. And you can call and make a pledge. Now there's a separate toll-free number for each, but don't worry if you get confused, our staff will guide you appropriately. So let's begin tonight by talking about employment and workforce education in the Inland Empire. Let's hear from Jamil Dada on video, and then we're going to talk to him in person.
Workforce investment boards, as I said earlier, are the public's workforce system. Great job. It's best kept secret. But workforce boards don't create jobs. They connect people to jobs. Because a lot of times people come up to me and go, well, how many jobs did your board create this month? We don't create jobs. Our main focus is we help dislocated workers. Our second focus is we provide training. And our third focus is we help youth. And that's the three funding streams of the Workforce Investment Act that the boards get. We work very closely with community colleges. And what you're talking about is career tech education. Huge, huge issue, especially in our region. So in the past, where we used to drive our kids and say, you've got to go through you got to go to a four-year university, you got to go to a four-year university. That's a thing of the past, because now we're banishing them if we do that, because they incur $100,000 plus in debt, and then they can't get a job, and then their lives are ruined. So a lot of these kids are better off if they go to a two-year college or go to a career tech college, and they start working with these apprenticeship programs. And we have tons of them, and we need more of them, but we have lots of them here that are very successful. We just have to change the focus from telling everybody you've got to go to a four-year university to what do you want to do, and let's put you to a career tech. Again, in workforce development, education plays a big role. And I'm a resident of Riverside County, proud, had opportunities to move. Don't want to move, I love it here, I want to stay here. So it's tough for me to say negative stuff about our region, but there are many problems. And one of the problems is that we have high unemployment. As you know, it's generally 4% higher than the national. And the main reason is because we didn't diversify our economy, and we got stuck. We got caught, with our pants down, so to speak, when this stuff happened 4 years ago. So what's happening here is we're not graduating enough students. The state average of graduates with a bachelor degree is 30%. In LA, city of LA and the Bay Area, the bachelor degrees are 50%. But in our two-county inland Southern California region, it's 20%. One of the things that I like about what California is doing is California is mandating that the workforce boards, 49 are in California, and they're mandating that those 49 boards spend more money, use more of their allocation on training. And that's actually a good thing, because we want to train more of our workers, our unemployed workers, to get better training so they can get a better job.
I'm happy to welcome Jamil Dada to our studio. Thank you so much for being with us, Jamil.
It's my pleasure, Roger.
So in the video, you talked about many things, and we're going to cover several, but I want to go right to this thing you talked about. One of the three prongs of the investment board, the Workforce Investment Board, is youth. Tell me about how the Workforce Investment Board locally, you're on Riverside, are you not?
Correct.
How do they help youth?
I chair the Riverside County Workforce Investment Board, and all the workforce boards funding, the three silos I mentioned, one of them is youth. And what we do is we work with youth ages 16 to 24, and we operate youth opportunity centers. So Riverside County's Workforce Investment Board operates 6 youth opportunity centers.
And describe what an opportunity center is.
A youth opportunity center is, we actually have over 1,000 youth enrolled in these youth opportunity centers. It's a place for them to go and hang out and network, and they learn resume writing and confidence building, and they get classes. And I'll tell you, I just got back from Washington, D.C. this week, and I took a group with me of youth. Huge, very successful trip. The legislators were so impressed. They were in awe that the programs work. The funding we're sending you is actually working, because these kids are all at risk.
I'm going to interrupt you and set the stage here. You're part of a group of people, volunteers, here locally, that help allocate funds that come federally and state to these various projects, including, in this case, the 6 opportunity centers.
Mhm.
You were able to take these youths to Washington, and you mentioned legislators. Did they actually meet congresspeople?
They did. They met department assistant secretaries at various federal departments and members of the House and the Senate to actually talk face to face to say, please, this program works, you know, don't cut it. I mean, everything needs to be cut, we understand, but some programs are successful, and we have to balance those.
So what you're seeing is that the programs that you help oversee, at least on the funding side, are under budget pressure, but you know that from the ground that these actually work and they need to be sustained.
Well, they're directly connected to the economic recovery, Roger, directly connected. If these kids were not in these programs, they'd be out on the street. They wouldn't finish high school.
So did you snatch up the kids that are, for instance, the stellar kids that would otherwise go to, say, the Air Force Academy and the Annapolis Academy, or were these literally off-the-street youths that you took?
No, the way the program is funded through the Workforce Investment Act and the Youth Opportunity Centers that are funded through the Workforce Investment Boards are the at-risk youth. So we don't snatch the kids that we know are going to school. These are the at-risk youth. These are the youth that for some reason have disengaged, that are not finishing high school, that are not working, that are on the street, and we bring them in and teach them success.
You know, we had somebody here that was a counselor with the Rubidoux Youth Opportunity Center.
Which is one of our centers.
Yes, and he was talking about how they do a lot of pulling kids out of gangs and giving them another direction, how they take dropouts and give them an opportunity to engage in a high school diploma or a GED and go on to college. So it seems to me that we as a community have benefited over decades now from lower crime, less intrusion of gangs, and part of it is through these kind of projects that you're helping to guide.
Absolutely. I have said this frequently. The best way to stop a bullet is a job. Get these kids a job, and they'll get off the street and off of gangs. And that's exactly what's happening. And by keeping them working and making them productive members of society, just think about all the other money that does not have to be spent on them. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Jamil, I want to talk about you for a moment because you're a very interesting person. You're vice president for a local community bank, and yet you volunteer with all these community and governmental projects. And that's not paid, that's not your career, that's your other half, that's your give back to our society.
Absolutely, Roger. I'm an immigrant, very proud. People ask me, what's the best thing you've ever done in your life? What's your biggest accomplishment? Becoming a U.S. citizen. And I'm proud to be part of the world's 5% that lives in this great nation, and this is my way of giving back. So yes, that is all my volunteer work. I'm fortunate that my bank allows me to do this as well, but it's a way of making a difference if I can.
Okay, you know what? I'd like to take a moment and take a pledge break, but don't go anywhere, because in this video, we're going to hear from kids who will ask Jamil questions about how he got into his career. And when we come back, Jamil will give us the answers.
I think that's the thing that triggers, their success. They realize that others believe in them, and then next thing you know, they're doing things that they didn't think they were capable of doing. So that's it. That really gives us a lot of gratification on that.
We oftentimes are in the community, just in the grocery store, and someone will remember us and say, oh, you guys helped us so long ago, or they've sent their family members into the office and they say, you know what, you really helped me. I need you to help my brother. I need you to help my sister. They need to get on the right track, those kinds of things.
That finishes high school in their lifetime will earn about $400,000 more than a high school dropout. But somebody that gets a bachelor's degree that finishes college compared to that dropped out of high school earns about $1 million more in their lifetime. So it's a huge thing. That means they would have more money in retirement, they'd be able to do more things every day, and it's the trickle-down theory. If they're making more money, they're paying more tax, they're spending more money, which is creating more jobs, and so on and so on.
Honesty,
a willingness to get the job done right, all the kinds of things that actually you've mentioned before, the soft skills. It's fine to say that students should learn the technological skills, and students certainly should learn to read and to write, but the soft skills, that's one of the most important parts of human capital, and a lot of our high school students don't know those skills, even though high school teachers, high schools throughout the state are doing everything they can to teach it to them.
Probably traditional in my playwriting classes, in that we deal with those basic foundational elements of Aristotle. So when I teach my playwriting classes and when I teach hip hop theater, we deal with, you know, those 6 elements of plot, theme, character, dialogue, music, and spectacle, and how those tools, those elements are used in storytelling. You know, protagonist, antagonist. I have a protagonist. What does he or she want, and what is stopping him or her from getting that is the basic foundational premise of storytelling when it comes to anything that I do. And so even when we're working on a piece that's choreographed, if you're dancing, I still want to know what is it that you want as a dancer. You're not just doing your thing because you want to do it, but there's a narrative. There's a journey that the character is taking. So absolutely, those basic foundational elements are definitely present in the work that I do with my graduate students at UC Riverside, and absolutely with the work that I do in the community and everywhere else. Because I think that there's something really great about having those foundational elements to fall back on, and to be able to say, listen, we're putting this piece together. What's the dialogue? How do the characters speak to each other? You know, where's the music and the spectacle? How do we make something that makes people go, wow? You know, because after all, it's still theater. It's still this idea of engaging an audience in order to deliver a message. Doesn't matter how great the message is if nobody listens.
So I've always felt that words are powerful, and working with Kirby just showed me that I could use those words and create something more than just what was on the paper. The paper became alive to me. And it was like I was saying earlier about those spaces in between. Now when I write, I see things in between the spaces of my words that I normally didn't see before I got into graduate school. And I just think it's important that when you're writing, you kind of step away from the writing. You become almost observant of your own writing.
How did you decide what you wanted to do in your life? And at what point in time did you figure out, like, this is what I want to do? Do you have any advice for me going into college this year? Do you believe in finding a job that's more towards money, like how much money you make rather than how much you love it?
How does your life differ in Pakistan than from the United States? What advice can you give to other students that are the minority in the United States?
One thing I found interesting was that how you found personal success, yet you've returned to your community time and time again to help out people from around here. And well, I'd really like to know, is there something personal or anything that ties you here, or is it just kind of a community, a bond that just brings you back here time and time again? Well, as a recent starter of college, I have a question. Is there any specific advice for a college undergraduate? I know that the economy is kind of a bit down right now, and so students have to take out a bunch of loans and more money they'll eventually have to pay back. Is there any advice to kind of ease the transition from high school to college?
What motivated you to work so many positions in various companies and be in the workforce? With your current positions in many companies, what do you plan on doing with your experience in the future?
Okay, so Jamil, let's hit on some of those questions.
Sure.
I'm going to summarize them. Those kids were great.
We'll give it a shot, yes.
They saw some of what you did from the video, and they posed these questions to you, Roadtrip Nation style. So the first is, how did you decide on your career?
Wanted to help people. It's just another extension of helping people. Banking, investment banking, giving advice. It's just an extension of helping people.
Now, I'm just going to take just a second and mention, you're on the local Workforce Investment Board, you're on the state, you were chair of the state, interim chair for a long time, you're chair of the Riverside Community College Foundation,
Yes.
and you are chair, or were chair, of the National Association of Workforce Investment
That's
Boards.
correct.
That's very busy.
It's hectic, but you know, you gotta try to do what you can to make things better for everybody.
Okay, what advice for kids going to college?
Stick to college, but focus on careers as well. Pick a career and go with that line in college.
So maybe not art history in this economy?
Not art history in this economy. Something to do with apprenticeship or career, vocational.
And
yes.
we got a question, a great question. Where in this economy, because you know we all have to make a living, would you say the dividing line is between choosing what will make you money and choosing what you're passionate about?
You really want to, seriously, even if you make a little less money and times are tough, you want to find something that you're passionate about. Because if you don't, 3 to 5 years, 10 years from now, you'll be miserable. And you don't want to do that. Find something you like to do and stick to that. The money will follow.
How about American life versus life in Pakistan?
It's night and day. We have freedom to do what you want, freedom to speak, freedom to be who you want. Can't have that anywhere else in the world.
I know you're a big advocate, not only for America, but for the military. You're also, amongst the list of things, you are part of the board that oversees March Air Base's museum.
I am the president. It's a privilege. I am president of the Marchfield Air Museum, terrific institution. And while we focus on preserving a future for our past, and we want to make sure that our youth don't forget the sacrifices of our great military, we're now embarking on focusing on science, technology, engineering, and math.
And you just missed getting
the space shuttle by this much. They gave 4 of them, and we were 5th in line.
Oh, so close.
Just by that.
That would have been great for the Inland Empire.
It would have been awesome for the Inland Empire, and it would have really focused us on science education for our youth.
And not just, you know, we talk a lot about educating these kids in more hard sciences, but again, we're taking a top-down approach, saying, we know what's best for you, you kids have to get more math and science. Turning the March Air Base Museum into something that advocates science for science sake and shows the benefits of it, both in space exploration and in military applications, is something that would motivate the kids to decide to pursue it on their own.
Absolutely. It's not just about recruiting them for the military. That would be great too, because we need that. But it would drive them into careers towards science and engineering. And I'll tell you, we have 100,000 visitors a year at the museum, and 25,000 of those are kids. So we have to take care of our kids. We must put our youth first.
Okay. And any advice for minorities? You're an immigrant yourself.
In a great nation like this, there is no such thing as a minority. Everybody's equal. That's what's so phenomenal about this country.
Great. And this I've heard from a lot of people. You go to Washington, D.C. so often. Mm-hmm. You've met presidents. You work in Sacramento so much. Why do you still live in the Inland Empire?
Because I love this community. This is a selfless, patriotic region, and I'm so fortunate that I ended up here. And I get job offers from other places, not interested. I want to stay here because this is a great region. And this is going to become, once again, the fastest growing region in the country in the next 10 to 20 years.
As it was before the decline.
As it was before the decline. And
okay.
People will be moving here, and this is a great place. So if you're here, stay here. Don't go anywhere.
I have a final question for you from the kids, and that is, what do you do if they already have college loans?
That's a tough one. And I know that Congress and both houses are trying to figure out a way to forgive some loans or to at least give them a longer time to pay them off. Because if they're not working, they're not able to pay them off. And I think that that will happen. So they need to continue to try to find work and then pay them off slowly.
You know, spearheading right off of that is this discussion of, you mentioned in the video, and this plays to your answer, this idea that if you have such an onerous large loan, it's really going to saddle you because unemployment for graduates is so low. And I'd love to talk about that a little bit. How low is it for graduates?
50%, almost.
50% of college graduates are having trouble finding a job.
It's awful. It's the worst it's ever been. We have the fewest percentage of our population of under 24. It's just absolutely a disaster. And unfortunately, the legislators are not focusing enough on this. They should be. 50% of our college graduates are not working, and they have these huge debts, so we're shackling them, basically, handcuffing them and saying, go back to your parents and live at home, and sorry, we don't have jobs for you. So it's a really, really tough situation.
Okay, so let's talk for a moment about why these kids are not getting jobs. You mentioned something before, not on the show, that I've heard about the fact that we used to hire the youth and not hire people that were in the twilight of their career, and that's flip-flopping.
Well, Roger, and that's, you brought that up, and it's interesting because these aren't just challenging times, these are changing times. Everything is different. You know, if people think all of a sudden, you know, things will be hunky-dory in 2 or 3 years, everything will be back to normal, You know, where it's the end of the world as we know it. Things are different.
REM reference there?
I'm a rock and roll guy, you know. So yes, all the bars that were set have been reset. Things are different. 10 years ago, when we used to interview industry and leaders and businesses and say, if you have a job opening, you have a 25-year-old applying and a 55-year-old applying, who are you going to hire? 80% of the time, they'd hire the 25-year-old. Now, 10 years later, we interview businesses. You have a 55-year-old applying, you have a 25-year-old applying. Who are you going to hire? They want to hire the older worker.
Why?
Why? Because they're telling us that the younger workers are not disciplined. They don't have the soft skills. They don't interview well. They don't make eye contact. They're so used to their gadgets. And I know technology is great, but I think they're overusing it. I think they're just so into not communicating that they may have the skills inside, but they're not exuding them. They need to figure out a way. That's why the workforce centers and our youth opportunity centers help those students, because they teach them how to interview, how to dress, to show up on time, to show up at all.
You're telling me there's a problem with kids in an interview not showing up?
Absolutely. We have job employers telling us kids don't show up, and then they call the next day and go, I couldn't come because something came up, can I come tomorrow?
As if it's no big deal.
Yeah, I think a lot of our youth today, unfortunately, some of them, feel that they are entitled to a job. They keep forgetting that employment is by invitation only. It's like the marketplace. If the employer has this job and you meet the match and you are willing to work for that, what they're paying, it should work. But they have so many people they can interview now because unemployment is so high that if you don't interview well, you've just blown it. First impressions.
You mentioned the youth opportunity centers help with those soft skills. And another facet does too, is that right? Displaced worker?
Yes. The dislocated worker funding for us.
Dislocated worker.
Same thing, is where when people that are not working come to see us. So we provide lots of things for them. We give them access to computers, database, we help them, we do training classes, we will send them to training. All this, by the way, is done at no cost. It's all provided by your government. It's your taxpayer money. And that's what the workforce investment boards do. They get together and decide how the funding should be allocated. But that money goes to good use. And I'm telling you, the San Bernardino County Workforce Investment Board and the Riverside County Workforce Investment Board are the two best kept secrets in the Inland Empire. So for those of you that are not working, look for one of your workforce centers in the two county and go there and they will help you.
I'm going to plug you for just a minute in a way that I hope you'll accept. And that is, you were appointed by Arnold Schwarzenegger to be the interim chair for the board that he had that was the alliance of the various investment boards around California.
Correct.
And normally when another governor comes in, they change out all the executive administrative staff. And they kept you and your staff on for a great deal of time. Jerry Brown did. And then eventually he did what all governors do, which is appoint all of his own people. So out of the 44 that were in this alliance, 42 of them were dismissed, but you were one of only 2 people retained.
Yeah, I must have done something right. No, and you're right. What happens is when governments change, state, federal, they wipe the slate clean and they bring their own people in. And so Governor Brown kept us for a while. Then about a month ago, they decided we're bringing our own, and they did. So I don't know, but I will say this, that it takes a unique talent to work with both parties, and I'm hoping that I do that, because I do work with both parties. That's one thing I've always done in Sacramento and in Washington.
The reason I brought that up isn't just to plug you, it's to say that the Inland Empire is benefiting, I believe, from having expertise that continues to be engaged at the state and national level in yourself. You're not leaving the Inland Empire, and the various administrations keeping you on means we have a depth of expertise that we are allowed and privileged to draw upon, not only in the prior 8 years of Schwarzenegger, but now with Jerry Brown's administration. I'm glad you're doing the work.
Well, you know, I believe in this region, and I'm telling you, Roger, I bring people here not just from LA, but from all over the country, from Washington. They come here and they love this place. There's so much great stuff in our region. We have to be advocates for it.
What school did you go to?
I grew up in another country, as you know, and I came here at age 21, and then I went to USC.
Trojan, go Trojans.
Right on.
Okay, and from there, I understand you got into a retail business.
I did. I actually had started my retail business while I was in college, because I come from a business family and I have business in my blood, and I was itching to do something, and I started a business, and I did that for 10 years before I moved. Actually, let me rephrase that. I moved to the Inland Empire in '86, and I still had my business. And then a couple of years after that, I decided to switch careers.
Now, you actually branched into volunteering at the governmental level. How? This is the pivotal moment.
Well, when I had my business in Century City in LA's West Side, Sonny Bono was one of my clients. But then I got out of that business when I moved out here, and then, lost touch. And then a few years later, all of a sudden, we ran across each other because he was the mayor of Palm Springs, and he was running for Congress. So I got involved in his campaign and got involved with him. And the next thing you know, here I am, I'm sitting in front of you talking about Washington.
How many people serve on these various workforce investment boards around the country?
There's 550 workforce boards, and the average boards are anywhere from 25 to 45, so depending on the population. But the majority of every board is a volunteer business person like me. So there are over 12,000 business people like me, volunteer business leaders, that sit on these 550 workforce boards.
So 12,000 people go and meet with legislators in Washington?
Unfortunately, 90% of them don't. And that's why we have these funding problems, because legislators don't get it, because all 12,000 should be doing this, and they don't. And that's what I do too. I advocate to them, and not just me, but all the national board, that we've got to be telling our message to our legislators. We need to bring legislators to our workforce centers, our youth opportunity centers in their own respective regions and say, look, Madam Congresswoman, Congressman, sir, did you see, look at what's happening. When I was there this week with the kids, they were in awe. They were like, we had no idea this was happening in our region, in my district. So we need to educate them so the next time funding comes up, they'll remember.
You get to Washington how often?
A lot. More often than my wife would like me to be. But I have to give her credit because she is my angel and my lifeline. I am nothing without her, and she's very supportive. But I go whenever they need me to go. I testify before.
Maybe 8 times a year, I understand.
6 to 8 times a year, because especially the last year or two, because of the funding crisis.
So how do we get them out here to the youth centers?
They're on break now for 6 weeks, and I know they're politicking. This is the best time, people. Go to your member of Congress and your senator and tell them, we will vote for you, but we need your support. We need you to come and visit your workforce center. Go to their offices, go to their district directors and their chiefs of staff, and bring them and show them how successful these programs are.
And they're going to say, but we invest in the Inland Empire more than per capita than any other region of the nation, right?
Actually, we're dismally way behind.
So tell us about that.
Well, funding. Right now I'm talking about foundation funding from private foundations.
Okay.
The per capita funding that the Bay Area gets is about $200 per citizen. The Los Angeles area gets $100 per citizen. And guess what Riverside County and San Bernardino County get?
$150.
$15.
$15 per person from private foundation.
We're missing out. And the Bay Area gets $200. Come on. What are we, chump change? So we need to be making noise. All of our citizens should be making noise in Sacramento and Washington and with every organization, because we are the future of this country. This area is growing. This is a really dynamic region, and a lot of people don't understand that because they don't know about it. So
before the downturn, before the housing bubble burst, San Bernardino and Riverside were two of the fastest growing regions in the nation.
Correct.
And you know that projections say that we will resume being among the fastest growing in the nation. If that's the case, why do we get so little funding?
They'll be fastest growing not because the foundations or the legislators are paying attention to us. And here's the caveat. Well, they'll be fastest growing because we're adjacent to LA, but mainly because of the weather, because the weather is so good. So legislators don't care about giving us money. We'll grow anyway. But we need to go and put the cart before the horse and say we need funding because we're going to be fast growing. We can't wait till we've grown fast and then say, now we're behind, now we need more money. We need to be fighting that fight now.
So you're saying our benefits actually work against us in that people don't see us as growth crippled, and so they don't pre-fund us.
Correct.
They know that we're going to expand. We're the natural expansion area for the LA basin. How many counties are in SoCal?
58 counties.
In all of California?
All of California, 58. But 6 counties make up Southern California. This is an interesting number. If you look at the state of California, it's long and narrow, 58 counties. The 6 counties that make up Southern California have half the population. Of the 38 million people in our state, our 6 counties, Southern California region, has 19 million people. And the rest of the 52 counties have 19 million people. So here's what we need to be telling the legislators, that we are growing fast, we will become more powerful, and you better start helping us now. Why should they be giving so much more money to the Bay Area when we're growing too? We're citizens of California, we're vote givers, we give votes, we pay taxes. So we just haven't been telling our story. We just haven't had the right advocates. We just need more people to be making noise.
I know you're out there making that noise, and I know some of the viewers of this program will hear and it'll resonate with them, and I'm hoping they'll join you in it. I want to mention a moment, local versus state level investment board funding.
It can be a challenge because, you know, I wear one foot, I have one foot in the state and 1 foot in the county. For the most part, it's okay, but there is some tension because, as you know, every governor, because the states are all broke, is looking for, I want the money. I want more money.
Yes.
So they would love to get more money of the workforce allocation that we get from national. So the governors are vying to get more of that money, and the locals are fighting and saying, no, 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 we deliver the services, we want to keep the money. So I'm an advocate for fine, 15% of the funding should go to the governors, 85% of the funding should go to the locals, because all the work is done at the local level.
Jamil, I'm going to go to a caller. Victor from Moreno Valley, you're on the air. What's your question, Victor? Thank you for calling.
Just trying to find out the location of the workforce center here in Moreno Valley.
I heard him say, is there a workforce investment board for Moreno Valley?
Yes, a workforce center?
A workforce, yeah.
Employment center? Yes, it's in the Towngate Center in Moreno Valley, off of Frederick.
Okay, you were part of Moreno Valley too, were you not?
I still am, yes. It's all part of, I'm a county guy, so yeah. Moreno Valley is one of my communities.
Okay, great, so wonderful. You mentioned the tension and the funding, but what I heard you say, and I want to highlight this because I don't think most people perceive this, the federal government is spending money at the local level. Is that what I'm hearing? In other words, the state would like to pull in from the local investment boards money and centralize it in California at the state.
The funding comes, yeah, the governors would like to get a bigger portion of the funding.
But that doesn't happen now. What happens now is it goes to the local boards, for instance, the one that you're on locally in Riverside, and they then decide what to do with it locally. Is that right?
Correct. As they should, because the local boards, every local board, San Bernardino County is the same, all 550 of them. They are the conveners of all the labor market information of their region. They bring labor and unions to the table. They bring local elected officials. They bring K through 12 to the table. They bring higher education to the table. They bring community-based organizations to the table. They bring everybody. That makes up the board, and together they all decide, okay, how should we allocate our funding? And who knows better about their local area than the local groups? The chambers of commerce are involved. Yeah, the governors shouldn't be making decision on how the local funding should be done. They get a 15% of the funding, fine, but we shouldn't be giving them any more than that.
So that sounds like that's actually a system that is working now. The money is going to the local community who is deciding how best to spend it in their local region. That's the way it should work.
Correct.
All right. Thank you so much, Jamil. I'd like to thank Mr. Dada for joining us, and I know we had another caller. I'm sorry we didn't get to him, but I'm pleased to say that right after this next video, we'll have 2 more guests who will join us to discuss Native American cultural education, Dr. Larry Gross and Julia Bernal, both from the University of Redlands.
Hello, I'm Lillian Vasquez, and I want to tell you about a very special opportunity for you to support KVCR and the American Graduate Project. If you're committed to making a difference in education, then this is your personal opportunity. Tour our station, check out what goes on behind the scenes, visit our green room, our control room, and our production studio. But the unique part of this pledge package is that it allows you to share your very own story about education and why it's important to you. Tell your own story and what made a difference with you. Together, we can inspire others. Here's all you have to do. Pledge at the $125 giving level to record your story. We want to know why education is important to you. When pledging $125 to KVCR's American Graduate Project, you will make a difference in the lives of teenagers in our community. Thank you.
This is the Roadtrip Nation Experience Curriculum, which empowers students to define their own roads in life. For 10 years now, we've been sending young people on road trips across the country in search of wisdom and advice from leaders of all walks of life.
It's kind of like discovering who you are and who you truly are.
The experience culminates with students going out into their local communities and interviewing their own leaders about how they got to where they are today.
You're actually asking the questions that you want to ask them, and you want to get the feedback on how you could be a better person.
What exactly gave you like the spark, like to start you out to want to be a firefighter in the very beginning?
When you were younger, say about our age, could you see yourself ever doing this career?
How did you overcome the obstacles that life thrown at you?
Where were you at our age? Where were you when you were 16, 17, and 18?
Did anyone doubt you in your process of trying to become a basketball player, trying to become Secretary of Education?
Oh, sure. People doubt you all the time. And so the question is, do you let those doubts stop you, or do you listen to them and take those weaknesses and turn them into strengths?
We all need to challenge ourselves often in order to help us grow as individuals.
Hello, I'm Lillian Vasquez. We've just seen how the Roadtrip Nation curriculum has enriched the lives of students from all over the United States. Please help us to ensure the same Roadtrip Nation experience for inland area students. You can do this when you pledge at the $60 level. You will help to support KVCR and ensure this type of learning for a student right here in our own backyard. Of course, you're welcome to give at any amount that fits your budget, and know that you are supporting KVCR, education, and the American Graduate Let's Make It Happen project. The number to call is 800-533-5827 or pledge online at kvcr.org. And thanks.
NOLA Indian School is a small, itty-bitty school in Suweba, California. It's from 6th grade to 12th, and I loved it. I know some people were really happy to graduate from there, and it was the best years of my life. Coming here, a lot of people are more outgoing, where I believe a lot of Native Americans are more conservative in a certain way, and so it's completely different. Like, there are more people to talk to here compared to Noli, and I'm not related to half the people here, which was completely weird to me, and it's just a whole new surrounding. It's worth trying hard to get into college. A lot of people, they want to give up after high school, and I don't see that as I don't think that's a really good thing to do, because college is way better than high school. And it's not as difficult as everybody says. It is hard, but it's not like unbearable, and everybody should give it at least a chance.
Yeah, I grew up in Lame Deer, Montana, and moved to Billings, Montana when I was in 5th grade. I went to boarding school at Sherman Indian in Riverside, California, and that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to come to University of Redlands. I really liked the school. They had a lot to offer to me, and I liked being in California. At first, I was kind of homesick. I wasn't used to it, but it opened up a lot of opportunities for me, like college scholarships, and it was easier to focus on school because you're not going out every weekend with your friends and hanging out. It keeps you focused, and the teachers actually, their classes are a lot smaller, so you get a lot more attention if you need help, and Sherman was really helpful to me. The Pipeline program is a road to college for Native American students, introducing you to the classes you'll be taking in college and what the professors expect. You also get a taste of dorm life because you're there living for 2 weeks with other kids and you become really close, and it's like family. In the morning, we would get up and go to ceremony, and then we'd go to breakfast, and every other day we'd go to Western University, and they'd teach us about diabetes because that's really like high risk in Native Americans. And we'd have different classes. We'd have drumming classes, we have dance classes, and then in between those they'd have classes, introduction basically to some of the college classes. And it was really helpful because like you could talk one-on-one with the professors and see what they expected, and they kind of told us about the classes they taught, and we also got to do fun activities like learning more about our culture, because some of the students didn't know a lot about their culture like going into the program, so it helped them out and made them want to expand their knowledge about their culture.
Welcome back to Plugged Inland. Joining us in the studio now from the University of Redlands are Dr. Larry Gross, a professor, and Julia Bernal, a student. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Now
Thank you
we're
for having
switching.
us.
Thank you. You're switching topics completely to Native American cultural education, and you are, for the Inland Empire, kind of at the cornerstone of that. Tell us about it.
Well, Roger, you know I do like to say my title, so I'm going to give it to you right now. I am the San Manuel Band of Mission Indians Endowed Chair of Native American Studies at the University of Redlands, and so happy to be here tonight.
Great. So does that mean you're a San Manuel Indian?
No, I am Anishinaabe from Minnesota, Chippewa for the totally clueless, all right?
That would be me among them. So you're from Minnesota originally.
That's right. If you can't tell by my accent,
you betcha.
You better. I'll start talking like they do in Fargo really badly. Okay.
So you're out here, and you're a professor at the University of Redlands. Endowed chair, for those people that don't know, means that you're a professor that has a funded position to accomplish a goal.
That's exactly right. The San Manuel Band of Mission Indians very generously provided a gift to the University of Redlands, and part of that gift was to establish this endowed chair. What that means is that there's a hunk of money in our budget, in our endowment, to pay for my position. So that means that two things. One, I never can be fired because of budget cuts.
That's good.
Yes, you're telling me. And the other thing is, you know, someday I will be leaving the University of Redlands, whether I retire or what, you know. But after I leave, they will be hiring someone else to do Native American studies. You know, so they won't be hiring someone to do like engineering or business or math or whatever, you know. It will be Native American studies. So that means that there will always be Native American studies at the University of Redlands.
So that's new with your chair position, is that right?
That's right. This is the start of my second year here.
And so you are tasked with creating classes.
That's right, yeah. As part of the gift agreement with the San Manuel Band of Mission Indians, we're tasked with creating a Native American Studies curriculum. We're working with the Native American Advisory Group on that, NAAG, NAG. I didn't come up with that name, okay, Roger? I want you to know.
Ha, ha, ha. I know that was the laugh break there, so I'll give it to you. Ha, ha, ha. That was great. Thank you, Larry.
Yeah, so we're developing classes that we hope will fit into the strengths of the university and meet the needs of the students there. So we're developing classes, for example, in Native American environmentalism, Native food justice and sustainability. I'll be teaching a class this spring in Native American women.
And you teach these, do you not?
That's right, I'm teaching these classes.
And you attend.
Yes. I'm taking one of Larry's worldview and religion classes, Native Americans.
So you're a student. Where are you in college, Julia?
I'm a senior this year, so I've been at Redlands. This will be my 4th year at Redlands.
And before, you couldn't take Native American studies at all.
No. So I decided to go the English and literature route. And then last year, they started the Native Students program. And so it was in the middle of my junior year, which was kind of a little disappointing because it would have been nice if I even could minor in Native American Studies. But since Larry was teaching classes this semester, I really wanted to be a part of that.
Now, are you Native American yourself?
Yes, I am.
What?
I'm from New Mexico. I grew up on the San Diego Pueblo Reservation. I'm a mixture of different tribes, but I grew up in the San Diego Pueblo Reservation right outside of Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Now, let me ask to either of you, it's true that Native American studies is new, but it's common for most colleges to have gender and women's studies, African American studies, other kinds of curriculum to study people that either were a minority or immigrant or something a little bit out of the mainstream so that we can all appreciate their culture and understand their contribution to America.
That's right, yeah. And we're hoping to do the same with Native American Studies. And we think that Native American Studies holds a special place in that. If you look at the history of the United States, you'll see that at certain key points in our history, in our shared history, mainstream Americans turned to Indians, and sometimes for their very survival. And I find that pretty interesting that way. One of the best examples of this has to do with our own Constitution. Many people don't know this, but the U.S. Constitution borrowed heavily from the Haudenosaunee or Iroquois Constitution. In fact, at the Constitutional Convention, our founding fathers purposely and intentionally invited representatives from the Iroquois tribe to be in attendance. So we've all seen these pictures of our founding fathers at the Constitutional Convention. They left out the other half, all the Indians who were sitting there. Do you know how many speakers of Iroquois were at among the delegates of at the Constitutional Convention? There were 4 speakers of Mohawk at the Constitutional Convention among those delegates. This was because at that time, the fur trade was so important to our economy. So those traders and those business people had to know those languages because that's who they were dealing with to get the furs. And so, for example, there were points in the Constitutional Convention where they had Mohawk speakers get up and address the assembly. And those members of the assembly who knew Mohawk, they wrote those speeches down. And we still have them, And so, I find it pretty amazing, that this is like an integral part of our history, but yet very few people know about it.
Yeah, I would have to say that most people are taught American history, obviously from a European viewpoint, but these nations, you mentioned Mohawk. Is Mohawk part of the Iroquois system?
That's right, yeah. The Iroquois will often refer to themselves as Haudenosaunee, but I'll use Iroquois here tonight.
I'd love it if you stick to Iroquois.
No problem. Yeah, the Iroquois is a confederacy made up of 6 tribes, and the Mohawk are the keepers of the Eastern Door. Yeah, and I'm not gonna rattle off the other members of the Confederacy here because I don't want this to be a pop quiz. All right,
Larry, you just mentioned Confederacy, though.
Mm-hmm.
That means that there were different Indian nations that banded together through some kind of a union or treaty?
That's exactly right. The Iroquois have a very interesting story about how they came together. Previously they were engaged in clan warfare, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, but their peacemaker came and helped them to establish their constitution and to joined together in a democratic, like confederation. So the Iroquois actually have had for a very long time a written constitution that way. And the Iroquois do consider themselves to be members of separate nations. So if you talk with an Iroquois person, they're not going to say that they're Iroquois. They're most likely going to say, I'm Mohawk, or I'm Seneca, or I'm Oneida, or Onondaga, or Cayuga, or Tuscarora,
Kind of like I'm a Californian.
Yeah, something like that, yeah. So, and they had different languages, but they're able to unite together. And that was what our founding fathers admired about the Iroquois Confederacy, and that's what the Iroquois kept telling them. If you want to be strong, you have to unite together.
Because at the time, these were 13 separate, disparate colonies that were not really acting as one nation.
Exactly right, yeah. And so that's why the Iroquois kept urging them to join together, unite together. They kept telling them, at that time, the Iroquois Confederacy held the balance of power in North America. The Americans were terrified that the Iroquois Confederacy would join the British during the American Revolution. And so they worked really hard to keep the Iroquois neutral. Both sides had to negotiate, had to deal with, recognize the power of the Iroquois. And that's what the Iroquois said. We're powerful because we're united and strong.
Larry, I love hearing you talk, but I'm going to jump over and listen to Julia for a moment. Julia, you grew up, as you said, on what I assume is a reservation. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So what compelled you about Native American studies that you didn't already know?
That's like a good question because I went into Larry's class, I already have my own very unique and very rich culture, and I wanted to take that opportunity to learn more about other Native cultures around the country because they're all very different. And that's one thing that I really like to teach to other people is that we're not all the same and that we all have our own different ways of going about of things. And we have, like for instance, the Pueblo Indians, our traditions are very secret and very taboo to talk about, whereas a lot of other cultures are very open to sharing their ceremonies and views to the public. And so I find that pretty, really interesting, and I wanted to get, from a scholar's point of view who is also Native American as well.
And Larry, founding fathers, for instance, I remember hearing something about Ben Franklin and the Albany Plan.
That's right, yeah. I think it was about 1850 or so, there was a meeting in Albany, and these Iroquois were in attendance, and this is one of the first instances in which the founding fathers were drawing up a plan to come up with uniting the colonies together into the United States. And so, and again, those Iroquois were in attendance, I think Cornplanter is one of the individuals who, again, was addressing them and saying, you gotta unite, man, you gotta be together. So yeah, that history of interaction between our founding fathers and various Indian peoples was very long and extensive. They did have those economic ties and shared economic interests. So there was a lot of conversation going back and forth.